Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 113th episode of the Spiritual Brainstorm. In this episode, I'd like to discuss the ideas of dimensions, different dimensions, cosmic cycles, and different cycles that you find in nature, and how that relates to our own evolution here, and why nobody basically can shield themselves from the effects of cycles and evolution. And so let's start. Let's start first with creating these dimensions. Let's say this is fifth dimension. This is fourth. And this is third. And let's just say that this is biology. This is the world of ideas. And this is spiritual. Of course, these are just names that I give them because this is how I relate to these these dimensions. But I mean, there are many ways that you can call them, and there are many ways that you can think about the boundaries, because of course this is a continuum. There's not necessarily a break between the two. For instance, try to pinpoint the exact moment where we stopped being apes and when we started to be human beings. It's very hard, and it's very difficult to sort of put an arbitrary line saying, well, it's the moment where we started using tools, or it's the moment we stood upright, or it's the moment whatever we buried our dead. It's just very difficult. And so it is a continuum, but you still have, at a certain point, you know that you're in another dimension. Just like when you move from the different colors of the rainbow, you don't exactly know when you've left the color red, but you know when you arrived at yellow, for instance, or at blue or whatever. So a continuum. And let's say this is animals and pure biology. Humans are sitting right here, kind of on the fence. Wow. So here you have cycles that pertain to the physical world, like, for instance, seasons. And in order to adapt to these kind of cycles, you have to evolve. For instance, when you have physical fluctuations in temperature, and you have, let's say, spring, summer, autumn, and winter, well, you have to adapt because you have to sort of grow thicker fur, or you have to evolve the capacity to hibernate. There's just plenty of ways that you have to adapt your physical body in order to deal with cycles and things that affect you in the material world when you're at the stage of an animal. When you're at the stage of the human being, though, what's interesting is that you can pool resources from the world of ideas, like, for instance, using a jacket and not having to evolve your body anymore, your physical. You don't have to evolve your body like an animal would, because you can use tools, or you can build a house. You can also build a house. You pool, there's the idea of the house, and you pool that and you manifest it in the physical. And now you don't have to bother evolving your body. You can find ways around it. What that also means is that you can have sort of imbalances here where, for instance, if you're very rich, you can shield yourself from the cold or from certain mishaps in the physical world, like, for instance, an earthquake or climate change or whatever, by building a stronger house or being able to move very easily into another country where things are less dramatic. And so you also have inequalities here that set these things that set certain people apart, or certain people can basically, because they have. And don't forget that money basically is just an energy that allows you to pull more ideas from the realm of ideas into the physical, because money is an energy that puts humans into motion to manifest ideas. That's basically what it is. So if you have a lot of money, you can put a lot of humans together to build a stronger house, to manifest a stronger house, or a bigger house, or a warmer house, or a more isolated house. And so that's how we prioritize things, and that's how things sort of um, find an imbalance in the third dimension. But when we're moving towards fourth dimension, that is, ideas manifest quicker and quicker into the physical, and regardless of how much money actually you have to you control. For instance, in the 14th century or in the 10th century, in order to weave a jacket, it'd be very, very complex, and you have to have a lot of money, because the raw materials to find them and to find the right people to make the jacket. I mean, it was not an easy task, and even more so, for instance, building a house. But today, now you have robots, you have huge factories, and so there's almost no human that I mean, it's easy basically to find a jacket. It's something that you can even find in a shop for free, or even secondhand for a handful of, for almost nothing, for almost no money at all. We actually produce so much stuff that we are actively destroying clothes, because otherwise they would lose their value once they go out of fashion. So that's just how ridiculous things have gotten, and that's another sign that we are definitely nearly in the fourth dimension. But what happens, and what's really interesting, is that in the fourth dimension you also have cycles, of course. It's just that they're not necessarily physical. They affect humans in their psyche. Um, so it's basically like, for instance, it's cycles in terms of ideas. If you look at spiral dynamics, for instance, the field, it's really interesting. It shows you different stages in evolution of the human psyche and human psychology, and how we sort of evolved as a group, and thinking of how our brains evolved. And there is nothing, money cannot shield you from those cycles, because it's all happening in the mind, and it's the mind that has to adapt. It's the human psyche that has to adapt. And there's no clothes that you can buy that you can put on top of your psyche in order to remain in a stage, for instance, where you would live like a tribe 100,000 years ago. There's just no way you can protect your psyche against the advancement in the way the collective sort of, or these cycles work and evolution works. And so even though you've managed to shield yourself from your physical body from having to evolve further, and you've harnessed the world of ideas to protect your body and manage to you know um, navigate the cycles in the third dimension, to navigate the cycles in the fourth dimension, which is cycles in different ideas. Like, for instance, there was no king and no monarchy could shield itself, regardless of how much money it had, from the idea of democracy. Once that idea sort of took root in the human psyche as an advancement, and human rights and all kinds of other things. And the only way that you can shield yourself from these cycles, or learn to live them better, basically, or not be out of phase with that, is via the spiritual realm. If you manage to pull resources from the spiritual realm that you can navigate, then you can protect your psyche and manage this evolution in a much smoother way. But there is no money. Money is not going to help you to access this level. You cannot pay an angel to help you with your psyche. You cannot pay Christ $1 million to protect you from the evolution and the march of ideas. And what you find in the spiritual realm is this, the present moment, being in the now, basically. You're learning to control your emotional state and being in contact with your emotions, being in balance. Um, Basically, move out of the survival stage where the ego is trying to survive and fight for survival. All of that you can transcend via spiritual energy, which is basically above the whole duality that you find in ideas, because that's where most of duality exists. Don't forget, in the world of in this third dimension, there is no duality. Not really. It's only in the world of ideas that you have duality, and then you have no duality again. You don't encounter it anymore. For instance, when you have a gazelle and a lion, for instance, here, or atoms of positive or like subparticles of positive and negative energies, it's not a duality because there is no human or no being that can look upon those phenomenons and apply ideas that are dualistic in nature to their interactions. Otherwise, a gazelle and a lion interact in something that is below duality. And this here is transcending duality. And so there is a march here, also cycles and also pressures on evolutionary pressures, which which push humanity forward in the development of their psyche, and the ideas and the way they think and their moralities, their values, all kinds of things. And the spiritual realm can make that transition easier. And of course, I was saying here that ideas can shield you from the physical cycles, but that doesn't mean your body stops to evolve. It just means it's not under pressure and it's not a survival issue. Our bodies are continuously evolving, but not under the rhythm of the 3D. It's not the 3D that is solely responsible and puts pressure on this evolutionary drive. Animals, basically, it's either you evolve and fast sometimes, or you perish. Humans, it's we can evolve our bodies at our own pace because we've managed to pull ideas that let us surf these cycles much easier. And if we're a little late here, evolving our bodies, it's okay because we can make up with ideas. And the same for spiritual energies is something, it's not that it can shield and protect your psyche from evolution. It's just that you're going to live it in a much smoother way, as opposed to feeling like you're completely out of place, out of touch with reality, or living it in a very negative way, or feeling that you're being sort of forced to evolve. And that's what's really interesting also, is because this whole idea of inequalities suddenly falls apart. And regardless of how rich or how poor you are, you're going to feel these cycles. And the richest people in the world, for instance, are not necessarily any happier than the poorest people on this planet. Even though we sort of put most of our attention on these kind of things, we can see that ultimately they can be just as miserable, regardless of how many things or ideas they can pull into their reality, because that's not going to help them in this kind of, to navigate that kind of evolution. And so, you can look at, for instance, people that are stuck in duality, for instance, right now, whether it be people that are highly pro well, just to give a contemporary example, highly pro-vaccine or highly anti-vaccine or highly pro-big government or very anti-big government, both of them actually are miserable. Both of them feel very bad. And that is because it's the same pressure ultimately they feel on their psyche. It's like an animal that would grow too much fur or not enough fur in order to protect itself from winter. Too much fur and it would be too hot, and too little fur it would be too cold. And so it's not aligned, it's not balanced. And the same right now for people that are stuck in duality. If you're too rich or too poor, you will feel a big strain on your psyche. But it's not just that, of course. It's not a matter of poverty. It's a matter of how you think. It's a matter of who you are. And if you haven't found out who you are and what you're meant to do, or to be in balance with this march and these cycles in the realm of ideas, then you're going to feel out of balance, and you're going to feel bad, and you're going to feel the pressure of this evolution. And right now, some people try to um, bypass that via drugs, for instance. That is one way to try to mitigate the effects of evolution, of the pressures of evolution on the human psyche. But it's only a temporary fix. It's not going to help you in the longer term, and actually, it might actually damage you more than help you. And that's all the burnouts, all the antidepressants, all of those things are an attempt to try to surf this kind of evolution of the world of ideas within the world of ideas, but in a very bad and non-aligned way. So I hope you found this interesting. And of course, this is like the march of evolution, is the human is going towards the fourth dimension. And the more you are in that fourth dimension, the more you feel these kind of cycles and this pressure on your evolution. And nobody can shield themselves from that. That's for sure. And that's what's nice also, is that basically that's why we should all just turn within, because you don't have to worry about what's happening at the level of governments, or what happens at the level of what Jeff Bezos is doing, or what the World Economic Forum is doing, because ultimately you think that they can shield themselves because you're still stuck in a third dimensional mindset. You think that because they live in highly guarded and very strong buildings with military and all that stuff, that they are protected from evolution, because you're still thinking that this is the only evolution that there is. But there is no building that can protect you from the evolution of ideas and the fourth dimension. The fourth dimension is not physical. It is something that traverses walls, goes through anything physical. So these people can feel bad and vulnerable and out of balance and miserable, even within the most guarded, protected, sophisticated building, and they won't know why. And they'll think that it's because they don't have enough security, or they don't have enough material goods, or they don't have enough and they're going to try to use again ideas and focus on the material side of thinking that's the material side that is the solution, when in fact it's all happening within their psyche. That's the only way that they can actually evolve. And I would actually feel sorry for them, rather than try to go and oppose them and do marches and protests, because you can make yourself feel good instantly. This is in the fourth dimension, and in that kind of cycle, it's like like a human, for instance. Here, imagine like humans that are shivering in the cold, and they're waiting for their bodies to evolve. And you can just, if you're an evolved human, you can just pull the idea of a jacket, make it, and then you instantly feel good. And you don't have to worry about what the others are doing. And the same here for us as a human collective. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, you can evolve your psyche and feel better, and be in phase and in line with this evolutionary pressure that we're under in the world of ideas that's happening in the fourth dimension, regardless of what is happening on the outside in the physical, in the 3D. That's the magical thing. And that is something that is difficult to comprehend, because we are in between. We are still in between. We're still transitioning. And so it's confusing to know what actually is, the reasons why you feel bad, what is actually linked to the 3D and what is linked to the 4D. What is linked to these kinds of reasons and cycles, and what is related to higher dimensional cycles. So I hope you found this video interesting, and if you have a comment, don't hesitate to post it, and talk to you in the next video.